Welcome to your Healing Place podcast with Linda and Mindy. It is our desire to address common concerns of how abortion and faith intersect in order to validate the emotional pain and grief that abortion can bring and give hope that recovery is possible. Welcome back to your Healing Place podcast. Linda and I are here today, and we're going to talk about refuge versus a broad place. And so, this is something I've meditated on for a while, and I just really love at least the bit of understanding that God has given to me. Oftentimes He reveals things to us, and we think it's this great big thing, and it's probably just a little, speck of a great bigger thing. But anyway, this comes out, there's this particular verse that I'm going to read is where it talks about a broad place. And so in Psalm 18, verse 2, it says, "The Lord is my rock and my refuge and my deliverer." And then it goes down into, let me finish that verse. I'm sorry. "My God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold," and particularly focusing there on fortress and stronghold. And then in verse 19, it says, "He also brought me out into a broad place. He delivered me because he delighted in me." And this psalm is just a beautiful psalm. But, when we think about refuge, a lot of people identify with the refuge part, keep me safe. It's like being hunkered down and, I think of the Lord of the Rings movie because
That's where I was going to,
that's
Mindy.
the only virtual visual that I have. But,
Yes.
they're going into the refuge and they're going as far back as they can. And it's like a big rock, city, all this stuff. And then, but that's because the enemies are enclosing around them, right? So they have to go into the refuge. And Jesus, or our God, is our fortress, our stronghold, right? Our deliverer. But the broad place, it says he brought me out into a broad place. So we aren't going to stay in that refuge forever, because in that refuge, we're very limited if you think about that in terms of what a refuge is. Visually, it's a stronghold. It's a place where you go to keep people away. But we aren't to be in that place forever. And to think about God putting us in a broad place, I think of the Salt Lake. If you've ever seen the Salt Lake out in Utah, it is a lot of it is dried up, and it's just this vast, humongous, dried up, flat piece of ground. As far as I know, it's flat. And then you see the mountains in the distance, but it's just you could see for miles, right? And when he puts us in a broad place and he sets our feet there, he brings us out of the refuge. He puts us in a broad place and he's like, "Go." Because what I picture there is that the danger is so far away from you that you have miles to run and play and dance and do whatever he wants you to do in total safety. Now you have
Beautiful.
this big, wide expanse of freedom. And that's what initially we come in because we feel like everything's coming against us. I mean, our own thoughts, the enemy, people, right? Our perceived ideas of judgment, how people are going to judge us. We just feel like everything's closing in on us. The lies that we were told by whomever that might be. But then we we hunker down with God for a while. We learn about him, we get into his word, we begin to grow and begin to be strengthened. And then it's time for us to come out and be that ambassador of Christ.
Mm.
Go and tell our stories to people. And anyway, it's just a place of being strengthened. And then now the broad place is the place where we go and we do what he
Freedom,
wants us to do.
freedom and
Total
peace and
freedom.
security. Yes. Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that picture.
Yeah. So I don't really have much more to add to it than that but I did want to share that on this podcast, and I hope that it ministers to somebody. And so if you feel like you're in a refuge, you have to be in that stronghold with the Lord, that fortress. I would encourage you to embrace that. And again, let the pain of your abortion drive you into the arms of the Lord. be that catalyst that makes you press into his word and begin to learn, because truth is found only in his word. Freedom, real healing is only found in the depths of his word. And you may struggle for a while, and that's okay. But one day you just keep pressing in and he'll bring you out into a broad place. And actually, as I'm sharing that, there is a personal story that I can share with that actually. I struggled with cyclical depression and I didn't know what it was from. I thought it was from maybe I did have a chemical react kind of depression when I had a parathyroid tumor, and that was affecting, my chemical imbalances in my body. But once that was removed, I realized there was something else going on. There was a different kind of depression also attached to that. And it was this, I would be like, 2 or 3 days out of the week, and then I'd feel good again, and then I'd go down again. And it was not, the kind that I was debilitated, but I was functional. But man, it felt heavy and it just felt like something was on me. And I used that to press into the Lord. And it wasn't for years. I mean, for me, that was years. I didn't go on medicine because I was kind of afraid of how it would affect my body. So I never did. I thought about it many, many times, but I never did. But finally, the Lord, just a few years ago, actually, literally, I feel like He's brought me out into that broad place. A lot of my depression was because of my own behaviors. I would behave a certain way, it would cause a reaction in other people, blah, blah, blah. It would hurt me, and then I would feel down. But I didn't know that I was in that cycle. I'd been in that cycle for since I was young. And I just learned how to do it better as I got older. And then I
Mm,
became a Christian, and then I learned how to, you know, I don't know, cover it. I don't know, because anger, for me, it was anger, but anger becomes like a coping mechanism. Apparently, there's some sort of hormone that gets released when you're angry that actually makes you feel good. And you kind of can get in that kind of a cycle too. And so I had a lot of anger, but I realized that my depression was sin. And so I felt like I was always in this stronghold with the Lord. And I was like, Lord, I want to go out. I want to be free of this. What is wrong? How do I fix this? What do I need to do to change? I just causing it, making it to be the thing that caused me to dive into the Lord and press into his word. And then eventually he freed me,
mm,
you know.
mm,
But it's kind of like Jacob. Jacob wrestled with God.
mhm,
God could have easily, just kind of plucked him off of him and said, go away, stop. But he didn't. God let Jacob wrestle with him. And Jacob said, I'm not letting go until you bless me. And that's how it felt for me. I'm not letting go, Lord, until you bless me.
mm.
So I
And
pray that you
now you're
can.
in a broad place.
Now I'm in a broad place. Yes.
I love that
Yes.
picture. Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was inspired by the many conversations had through the years with women struggling from the emotional pain associated with abortion. Thank you for allowing us into your healing journey. Subscribe on major platforms where podcasts can be heard. Learn more about virtual abortion recovery healing at www.anevenplace.com. The link is in the show notes.